Emmett Till was talked about in many black households in 1955 after his death because parents felt that their children were not safe. After the death of Emmett Till, the civil rights movement began. Some people say that his death sparked the movement. In 1955, they were killing African Americans left and right, but people turned a blind eye to that because it was common. With Emmett's story, it was different. People noticed and saw the horror that Roy Bryant and brother J.W. Milliam had done to this boy. Even in today's society, there are movements that fight back for black equality. For example, the Black Lives Matter movement has pointed out some of the flaws with our judicial system and the corruption that has spread into law enforcement. People say Emmett Till's story died along with him in 1955. However, it is evident that the deaths of Trayvon Martin, Renisha McBride, and Sandra Bland all deal with the same factor of Emmett Till's death, racial discrimination. Therefore, racial discrimination is prevalent in our current society's deaths.
Mommy Carthen gave birth to Emmett Till on July 25, 1941. By the time of his death, he was only 14 years old. A Chicago boy like any other one, just wanted to have fun with his friends and visit his family in Mississippi. So he went down to Martin, Mississippi and stayed in with his uncle Moses Bryant. On August 24th, Emmett, along with his friends, went inside Bryant's grocery store, in which he began to talk to a white cashier, Karen Bryant, which was also the owner's wife. When Roy Bryant found out, he began to question people about the boy. Bryant, Jane W. Miller went to Moses' house and abducted him. Days later, on August 28, 1955, he was found dead in the Tallahatchie River. The killers were arrested. However, the judge declared them innocent and free of all charges. Till's mother decided to have an open casket funeral in Chicago to show how badly he was beaten and tortured by a white man. Thousands of people gathered from all around the country to go see him. That was the spark to the civil rights movement. Many people began protesting about the injustice that was done. All the people knew who the killers were. Justice was not served.
A really clear comparison to Emmett Till is Trayvon Martin. Trayvon Martin was a common teenager in today's society. Trayvon Martin was born to Sabrina Fulton and Tracy Martin on February 5, 1995. Trayvon was a common 17-year-old from Florida. With his parents divorced, Trayvon was on a school suspension and went with his father to visit his father's new wife. The night he was shot and killed by George Zimmerman, he was going back to his stepmom's house from a small store from which he bought a bag of Skittles and an Arizona drink and was planning on watching an NBA game that night. George encountered him and called the police, reporting some suspicious activity from the young man. Zimmerman then opened fire on the teen and killed him on the spot. He claimed that Trayvon had attacked him and was armed, but truly no weapon was found with Trayvon at the site of the crime. George was arrested, but not on the scene. It wasn't until Trayvon's parents called an attorney to take their case. Many people supported Trayvon's parents in this case. Huge walks were done all over the country, with thousands of people wearing black hoodies in his honor and how he was dressed that night. Even the President of the United States, Barack Obama, spoke on this case, saying if he had a son, he would look just like Trayvon. George wasn't put in jail and was set free, and this caused just as much of a spark on African American movements as Emmett Till did 57 years before. Two young boys, with a full life ahead of them, were unfairly murdered. Emmett Till's murder can be related to Trayvon Martin's just as easy as Trayvon's can be related to Emmett's. Trayvon was killed 57 years after Emmett. In both cases, however, innocent African American teenagers were killed by white men with little to no cause. Also, in both cases, the murderers were arrested, but they were both set free under different suspicious circumstances. George being allowed to have a firearm with him because he was a community guard fired at Trayvon after supposedly being knocked to the floor by the young man. On the other hand, Roy and Milam killed Emmett for supposedly flirting with Roy's wife at his store. In both cases, many people argued that the killers should have been in jail for many years, yet they didn't pass a single year in jail. The Black Lives Matter movement was triggered by these cases. Different time periods, but same effect. People protested and went to their funeral. Millions of tweets were sent with Trayvon's name, and back in the day, many newspapers wrote about Emmett Till from the moment he was kidnapped to the moment he was found. Both cases are truly related and have opened eyes of millions of people.
With the few stories that we have told, there are many other cases that have key facts in common. In addition to Emmett and Trayvon, there are people like Renisha McBride, Sandra Bland, Tamir Rice, Michael Brown, Eric Garner, and many more that have all been racially discriminated by the law enforcement. Sandra Bland was a woman who was stopped by a cop and then pulled out of her vehicle for no apparent reason. She had epilepsy, which is a disease in the brain that causes seizures. The cop was sued by Sandra's family. Michael Brown was also shot by a white cop. He was fired, and now he's having trouble finding another job as a police officer. Eric Garner was thrown to the floor by a white cop and choked. His last words were, "I can't breathe." Renisha McBride was also killed by a white man. Renisha was a young, talented woman who crashed and needed help. However, while seeking for help, she found death. Theodore Walfer answered to Renisha's knocks on the door with a shotgun, which killed her on the spot. All these cases have something in common: black victims.
As you've seen from these examples, it doesn't matter if it was 60 years ago or last month. The racial tension caused by black deaths at the hands of white men has grown, resulting in riots like the one took place in Ferguson, Missouri just 4 months ago. These deaths happen all the time, but many remain unknown to society. The reasons for these deaths are considered unjustified under society, but are justified in court. Over time, African Americans have been discriminated against, and even many years after supposed justice was reached, people are still killed and the murderers walk out freely. It's been over 60 years that white men have been set freely with unjust exclosures toward African Americans. Many people still feel that till this day, racism is a big part of the unjust in today's society and law enforcement. All of these murders come to prove how African American lives mean less to the community than white lives.